Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're doing something really cool. We're looking past all those noisy daily headlines to uncover the deep, structural connections that are actually driving current events. Seriously, we're going all the way from massive shifts in global military power right down to the integrity of our local, everyday institutions. We're going to see exactly how the whole shebang connects. So let's just dive right in. All right, here's our roadmap for today. First up, we're decoding today's current affairs. Then, our global focus, the NATO-Ankara summit. After that, we'll look at why NATO actually matters to India. Then, we pivot to our domestic focus, exam paper leaks. And finally, we'll talk about reforming the examination system. Okay, Section 1, decoding today's current affairs. Moving to Section 2, global focus, NATO-Ankara summit. So, we all know NATO has these deep Cold War origins, right? But honestly, the speed of its recent evolution is just staggering. I mean, they are now standing at 32 member countries. And the recent summit they held in Ankara, it totally proved that this North Atlantic alliance is decisively pivoting its strategic gaze to the complete opposite side of the world, the Indo-Pacific. Now, the absolute linchpin that makes this pivot so incredibly high stakes is Article 5. Collective defense. You've probably heard of it. Famously, it's only been invoked once in history, right after the 9/11 attacks. Basically, it dictates that an attack on one member is an attack on all 32. So think about it. When NATO shifts its geopolitical focus, this massive ironclad military guarantee travels right along with it. And in Ankara, the consensus among these nations was crystal clear. They need to prepare for a highly contested world. Now sure, greater defense spending and military preparedness, we totally expected that. But the real revelation here was their modernized definition of security. They're officially treating resilient global supply chains and Indo-Pacific stability as absolute core defense priorities. It just goes to show that modern wars are fought and won on supply lines just as much as front lines. And because of that, enhanced defense tech cooperation is now seen as absolutely vital to keeping those lines open. Which brings us to Section 3, why NATO matters to India. So for a country like India, navigating this shifting global architecture really comes down to one key concept: strategic autonomy. When a 32-nation behemoth alters the geopolitical chessboard, non-aligned nations have to aggressively recalibrate. It's the super delicate balancing act, A nation has to pursue its own interests without being forced into a heavy reliance on newly entrenched external powers or getting sucked into heavily skewed alliances. And you can see the global ripples of this recalibration almost immediately. NATO's massive push for defense tech, that directly overlaps with India's Atmanirbhar Bharat manufacturing goals, basically striving for a self-reliant defense industry. Then there's their Indo-Pacific pivot, which totally alters the calculus for existing frameworks we already have, like the Quad and AUKUS. And of course, their intense focus on resilient supply chains directly impacts global energy security. And let's be real, that energy security is absolutely vital to keeping India's economic engine running. All right, pivoting now to Section 4, domestic focus, exam paper leaks. Shifting gears to our domestic front. Look, a paper leak isn't just some administrative hiccup. It's not just a canceled test. It is a fundamental structural breach of the constitutional contract. By shredding Articles 14 and 16, a leak literally destroys equality before the law, and it replaces merit with a deeply entrenched systemic rot. It outright denies equal opportunity and public employment to the millions of people who have actually put in the hard work and prepared legitimately. Because here's the thing, a healthy, merit-based system fuels public trust, right? It ensures the most capable individuals are the ones managing state affairs. But a compromise system achieves the exact opposite. It essentially subsidizes corruption. It paralyzes vital government recruitment pipelines, and it drains millions from the state treasury for endless retests. Ultimately, it severely undermines the broader stability of public governance itself. So, what do we do about it? Section 5, reforming the examination system. Fortifying this incredibly vulnerable chain means we absolutely have to move to a zero-trust architecture. We need to leave behind the surprisingly low-tech realities of padlock and key transport and printed bundles. Seriously, it's time for fully encrypted digital question papers. And hey, where physical elements do remain, we need heavily, heavily secured transit systems. On top of that, we desperately require independent monitoring teams who aren't basically grading their own homework, and this all has to be backed by stronger legal punishments. I'm talking deterrents severe enough to completely shatter the economic incentive of cheating in the first place. So when you step back and look at it, these totally frustrating daily headlines map directly back to our core administrative themes. A paper leak? Well, that is a fundamental failure of good governance. The massive public outcry that follows is a sheer demand for transparency in how our institutions operate. And the push for encrypted exams and secure pipelines, that right there is digital governance in action. Wow. Okay, we have covered some incredible ground today. We went all the way from the macro strategy of NATO's expansion to the critical, everyday domestic challenge of securing public examinations. But before we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought. Can digital reforms truly restore public trust and secure a nation's meritocracy? Look, technology is a fantastic tool, for sure, but can it alone fix what is ultimately a crisis of human institutional integrity? It's a question that really challenges us to rethink the very future of governance and accountability. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, keep questioning.